I have served the Donetta Marguerite for 19 years. I came to this household as a girl of 22, carrying a single case and a letter of reference from a convent school in the valley. And I have not left it since. I dressed her in the morning and undressed her at night. I carried her tonic when her legs troubled her, and her rosary when her heart did. I sat with her through the long winter her husband was dying, and I sat with her through the longer winter after, when the house went so quiet that the clock seemed to stop. I know every crease of this family's life, every guest who was welcome and everyone who was not, every word spoken in the East Corridor and every word left unspoken in the library. I say all of this so that you will understand what it means when I tell you that I have never, in 19 years, seen the Donetta weep at her own dinner table, until the night of the autumn charity dinner, in the 3rd week of September, until Agnes. She had come to us 3 weeks before the dinner, arriving on a Tuesday morning with nothing but a canvas bag and 2 months of wages already spoken, for she had sent 1 month home to her mother and spent the other on the bus fare and the sensible shoes she wore the day I met her at the service entrance. She was 26, I learned. She had worked in a hotel laundry for 4 years before it closed, and she had answered our advertisement the same afternoon she received the closing notice. She was not the prettiest of the 3 girls we interviewed. She was not the quickest with the silver, but she had level eyes and steady hands, and she never once asked a question. She could answer herself simply by looking, and in this house, those 3 things are worth more than beauty and quickness combined. I liked her from the first morning. The Donetta's son, the Signore, as the household knew him, though the outside world knew him by a considerably heavier name, one that could empty a room of its noise the moment it was spoken. He was not at the estate that week. He came and went as the business required him, and in the ordinary life of the household, his presence was felt more in the respect his staff carried for him than in anything he said or did, directly. The Donetta ran her own house with a quiet iron grace, and that was the world Agnes entered. I will tell you about the afternoon of the charity dinner, because that is where this story truly begins, and because I am the one who saw it. The dinner was set for 7 o'clock in the orangery, the long glass and iron room at the south wing of the estate, where the Donetta hosted her autumn charitable event every year without fail. 36 guests. The donation envelope was the centerpiece of the evening's business. Every year the Donetta presented a sealed envelope containing the family's gift to the hospital foundation, and every year the amount was enough to build something that would carry the family's name, quietly and without fanfare, because that was how the Donetta believed good things should be done. I was walking Agnes through the linen arrangements at 2:30, and the Donetta sent me on a small errand to the village, a particular length of ribbon for the centerpiece arrangements that the florist had forgotten. Agnes offered to go in my place. I said I would go myself. The errand was mine to do. She said she knew the village already and could be back in 30 minutes. She said it in the way she said most things, not pushing, simply offering, and I said yes, take the car, be back before 4. She did not take the car. I did not know this until later. The estate groom, who had been driving the small cart down to the lower paddock gate that afternoon, saw her walking the 1.5 miles into the village, canvas bag over her shoulder, sensible shoes on the gravel. He thought she was a strange girl. He mentioned it to me the next day, and when I asked Agnes why she hadn't taken the car as I'd told her, she simply said she liked to walk. She said it without embarrassment. She had walked to work her whole life and saw no reason to stop. What the groom had also seen, and what he told me, because he was a meticulous man who noticed things, was what happened outside by the village baker's. There was a blind man who sat most afternoons on the low stone wall beside the baker's, a very old man with a tin cup and a folded sign. Agnes had stopped beside him on her way in for the ribbon. She had spoken with him for several minutes, and when she turned to go into the baker's, she had pressed something into his cup. The groom could not see what it was from the cart, but he had seen her check her bag afterward, the way a person does when they have given away the last of what they were carrying, to be sure they have not miscounted. She had come back with the ribbon. She was on time. She never said a word about it. I did not know, that afternoon, that she had arrived at the estate with exactly 8 coins left to her name, enough for 1 week's bus fare home if things did not work out, and that she had given 6 of them to that old man outside the baker's. I learned this much later, after everything that happened, When she was no longer the new maid, I could ask her such things plainly. She had done it because he looked cold and because, she said, she had enough for now and the future was not her department. That was Agnes. Now I will tell you about Mrs. Ferrars. She had been with the household for 3 years, brought in by the former estate manager as a paid companion for the Donetta. Someone to accompany her to engagements, manage her social correspondence, and provide the sort of steady, organized company that an elderly woman of standing needed and deserved. She was capable. She was well-dressed. She had an answer for every question before you finished asking it. The Donetta had told me once, in the careful way she expressed her true opinions, that she found Mrs. Ferrars very efficient. She had not said she trusted her. I had not thought enough about the distinction. What I did not know, and what the Signore's solicitors would confirm 3 days later from Mrs. Ferrars' own personal correspondence, was that she had been in quiet contact with agents of a rival family for 14 months. What they wanted was not money. What they wanted was the kind of damage that money cannot buy back. A public humiliation, carefully timed, in a room full of the people whose opinion mattered most to the Donetta. A substituted envelope at the charity dinner, the family's generous gift replaced by a crude envelope containing a small and insulting sum, and a note designed to make the old woman appear confused, diminished, not herself. A scene that would be talked about in the valley for years. A crack in the family's dignity, placed there by a woman who had been trusted in its house. It was a precise and cowardly plan. Agnes undid it in 4 minutes. I did not see it happen. I was at the sideboard when she moved. What I saw was the aftermath, Mrs. Ferrars' face, white as the tablecloth, and Agnes standing 2 steps behind the Donetta's chair, with her eyes on the floor and her hands folded, and an expression of perfect, ordinary stillness. What the Donetta's nephew, who was seated near the donation table, told me afterward. At some point during the pre-dinner reception, Agnes had been clearing the arrangement of lilies near the donation box. This was a task anyone might have done. No one had assigned it to her, which is why no one noticed her there, and she had found the substituted envelope tucked among the lily stems. She had taken it. She had replaced it with an envelope. She had sealed herself in the service corridor, and she had pressed a note into the Donetta's hand when she poured the water at 7:40. The note said, "Your envelope was switched. This one has the correct sum. I will explain after." The Donetta had read it at the table. She had glanced once at Agnes. Then she had looked at Mrs. Ferrars, who was seated 3 chairs down, and then she had looked at nothing at all, which was how the Donetta looked when she was deciding something. When the donation moment came, she stood and presented the correct sealed envelope with the same ease she had brought to 19 years of these evenings. Her voice was steady. Her back was straight. The guests applauded. Mrs. Ferrars excused herself from the table at 8:15. She was gone from the property by morning. I did not see the Signore arrive. He had come in during the dinner, quietly, through the east entrance, in the way he always moved, without announcement, without the fuss other men seemed to require. The household knew he was there the way a room knows a fire has been lit, not from any single sign, but from the fact that the air itself was different. I saw him standing at the far end of the orangery during the dessert course, in the shadow of the orange trees, watching the room. He was watching his mother. And then, because she was 2 steps behind his mother's chair, he was watching Agnes. His mother's nephew told me later that the Signore had gone to him at 10 o'clock and asked 2 quiet questions. Who saw what had happened? And what had happened before it? Meaning, was there anything in the afternoon, before the dinner, that he should know about? The nephew, who had heard about Agnes's walk to the village from the groom, told him about the coin. I was not present for that conversation. I was at the Donetta's side when she was finally settled for the night, her evening gloves folded on the dressing table, the guests gone, the orangery quiet. I had been with her for an hour. She had said very little, which was how she said a great deal, and I had not pressed her. At 10:30, the Signore knocked. He stood in the doorway in his evening clothes, and looked at his mother for a long moment. She looked at him. Something passed between them that I could not name and did not try to. It was the language they had always spoken to each other, the one built from 30 years of too much loss and too little said, and a love that had never once required words to be real. Then she said, "Go and find her before she sleeps." He went. I do not know exactly what was said in the service corridor outside the linen room, where Agnes had gone to finish the last of the evening's folding. I know that the conversation was not long. Agnes told me afterward, after many months when such things could be spoken, that he had asked her one question. A single question, the same one his mother had whispered to him before he left the room. He had asked, "Will you stay?" Not for the month, not for the season, not as a maid, as family. Agnes had looked at him for what she described as a very long time. Then she had asked him one question in return, whether his mother had truly asked this, or whether he was saying it for her. He had told her the truth, which was both, that his mother had been the first to say it, and he had been the one to realize, walking the length of the orangery, that his mother was right. Agnes stayed. I have served the Donetta Marguerite for 19 years. I have watched this household go through grief and through scheming and through all the ordinary treacheries of a powerful family that cannot always tell the faithful from the flattering. I have seen good people overlooked and small people elevated. And I have learned, through the long work of those years, not to expect the ledger to balance. That night it balanced. I have said I never saw the Donetta weep at her own table. That is true. She did not weep at the table. She wept an hour later, in the quiet of her sitting room, when she thought I had gone. Her head bent over a cup of cold tea, and her shoulders very still the way they went when she was keeping herself together, and the tears falling without any sound at all. I did not go. I stayed at the door, and I did not let her know I was there, because some moments are not for witnesses. What I will say is this. A girl arrived at this house 3 weeks before the autumn charity dinner with 8 coins and a canvas bag and a letter from a Valley convent school, and she gave away 6 of those coins to a cold old man on a stone wall, because she had enough for now, and the future was not her department. What the future turned out to be was this house, this family, a seat at a table that had never had a permanent occupant in the chair beside the Donatilla, because the right person for it had never come. The Donetta called her daughter before winter. The Signore told me once, in the brief direct way he had of saying the things that mattered. She doesn't know she saved something. I told him I believed she knew very well. She had simply not considered it remarkable. He thought about that for a moment. Then he said, "No, I don't suppose she would." And I thought of the baker's wall, and the 6 coins, and the afternoon she had not thought worth mentioning. Some people give from what they have left over. Agnes gave from what she could not afford to lose, and she did not once call it a sacrifice. She called it Tuesday. By October, the chair beside the Donetta was never empty again.